Let's jump into Learning Plan 2. This is a little longer, a few more details to this chapter, so we're going to talk about, we're going to talk in greater detail because this is very important. It's about management, leadership, delegation, and supervision. Now, many of you are probably either CNAs or LPNs, and as CNAs, you're not supervising anybody. As LPNs, you might be supervising CNAs. But as an RN, you will be supervising people, and it is a different experience. I hope some of you have some experience in supervision because it is a difficult skill to get comfortable with. Real briefly, to let you know my experience when I became an RN, I had been a nurse extern on a cardiac floor for a semester, and then I was immediately hired into the RN role on that same unit. As a nurse extern, I answered to everybody, and I was working with LPNs who had been LPNs longer than I had been alive. And I went from nurse extern to their supervising RN like that. That was challenging, and I learned tact right away. It's a little different. So let's talk about some management functions. What do managers do? Using some slides to keep me on task, and just found I'm missing a slide in the presentation. Welcome to my life. Anyway, nurses manage client care. They manage other caregivers. They manage doctors to a degree. Not officially manage, but you are in charge of keeping doctors on task and making sure they have the information so that they can stay timely. They provide leadership. How many of you have a leadership role where you're working right now? You will be in a leadership role when you're an RN. And part of that will be functioning on committees, and I hope you are involved in it with the committee as soon as possible. It's a very good way to become active within your organization. And when you're active in the committee in your organization, you have a chance to drive how the organization goes. So committee work sometimes is not fun. It can be a pain in the butt. But it's important so that you have an active voice. Now, what is the difference between management and leadership? Manage and lead. Very different roles. Very different roles. A manager, when you manage people, when you're a manager, your role is assigned to you. You are hired to be a manager, or you are promoted to be a manager. It is given to you. Leadership, let's use a different color for leadership. Because leadership and management are vastly different. Leadership is an assumed role. You step into the role voluntarily. You step up to the plate and say, hey, I got this. I'll take care of it. That's leadership. Leadership is an assumed role. Management is an assigned role. Managers are responsible for tasks assigned to them. A manager is given responsibility. So the organization sets a goal. Managers need to follow that plan. A leader, no specific goals necessarily, A leader may follow goals according to the organization, but sometimes a leader is kind of free-ranging. They function on their own to meet their own personal needs. Managers supervise people. And they assess. And sometimes discipline. Managers supervise their team. They assess their team's function, and as needed, they discipline or praise. Let's think positive. So a manager does. In other words, manager is a boss. There's nothing wrong with that word. There is nothing wrong with being a manager or being a boss of a group of people. Some managers, managers are important, and some managers are fantastic. We've all worked for managers that we really, really like. They're effective, they get the job done, they're really good managers. We've also worked for managers, I'm guessing, who are not good. Has anybody out there worked for a manager who you just didn't like working with? I had a couple. I endured their management. Did not like them at all. Didn't agree with how they accepted responsibility, how they delegated responsibility. Didn't agree with their supervisory skills, their assessment skills. But as an employee, I had no control. Leaders do not supervise, assess, or discipline. Leaders influence people. Leaders are influential. They're not bosses, or they're not necessarily a boss. You can have a manager who's also a leader, but you can have a leader who's not a manager and a manager who's not a leader. What's the difference? Aren't they interchangeable? They can be, and in the best managers are also leaders. It's not always that way though. A leader has assumed the role. They don't have a specific organization-driven goal, and they function through influence. Think of leaders that you've worked with. Leaders, maybe it was when you were newly hired, one of your coworkers kind of took you under their wing and acted as your mentor, or a neighbor, or friend, relative. Leaders are influential. Leaders have power. Leaders have power. Power that they've earned. Managers have power or authority that's given to them. Leaders earn it. That's the difference between management and leadership. Key importance. If you can combine both of those, if you can combine both traits into one person, you will have a fantastic organization. We all know that doesn't always happen though. So, and what is power? What is power? Power is the ability to influence. Power is the ability to influence someone else. You know, as managers don't necessarily have influential power. They have authoritative power. They have authority. Managers have an influential power. Leaders have other powers too. Leaders can sometimes reward. How could a non-manager leader provide reward power. Generally with their time, with their presence. We've all worked with leaders who we just want to be with. We've also worked with managers where we really don't want to be with them. So, difference between management and leadership. Critical difference. What else we got going on in this? So, management functions. Management has 4 functions. And they're important. They really are. And if we think about management functions, it's going to sound a lot like the nursing functions. Managers plan. Step 1, they plan what has to be done. They organize. Plan equals what? Organize equals how. They direct. And then that's who. And they control. And I hope you can read that. Control is when, where, and how well. If you've ever written an article for a newspaper, you always have to know the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows, right? Managers plan what is going to happen. They organize. How is it going to happen? They direct. Who is going to do it? And then they control. They evaluate when it's going to happen, where, and how well is it being done. Management functions boil down to 4 words. Managers plan, organize, direct, and control. So if you think about it, if you had to compare this to the nursing function, the nursing assessment, nurses assess and plan. They organize plan of care. They direct others in the cares. And then they evaluate and they assess how well the patient is meeting their goals. Nurses are managers. And ideally, nurses are also leaders. But again, we know that that's not always going to be a given. Now, how can you increase leadership power? Remember, power is the ability to influence potential. How can you grow that leadership power? You're active. Develop networks. Remember I mentioned get on committees. If you get on a committee, your voice will have more weight and more people will hear your voice and your ideas. Work with people. Listen. Ask questions. Provide answers. Provide suggestions. Take advice. Take criticism. We will not, none of us, ever be perfect in the job. We'll make mistakes. When we make a mistake and it's pointed out to you, a leader will listen, develop a plan for growth, and then improve. So take advice. Leaders do other things. Leaders motivate. Now we talked about the planning, the what question, the organization, the how, the directing, who, and the controlling, the when, the where, and how well. We didn't mention the why, did we? The why is motivation. I hope at some point you're going to be able to read that, because on my little screen I can't see that, but motivation or motivate is why. Motivate equals why. And in my opinion, that's the most important question that a leader has to answer. Some people think that the who, the what, the when, those are important questions, and they are important. You have to know what you're going to do before you can do it, correct? I mean, if you don't have a goal, it's really hard to accomplish anything. But in my opinion, motivate. Try that one more time, see if you can see it now. Motivate, or why, is critical for leadership. If I tell you, let's do this right now. I'm your teacher. Presumably that means I'm manager and maybe leader. And I say, I need a 25-page paper next week. That's what, right? So that's the plan. I want the 25-page paper written double space, submitted through Angel. That's how. Organizing. The directing, you need to write it. That's who. And it's due in a week. That's controlling. Who's going to jump on that assignment right now? Nobody? How about if I throw in a motivating factor? Let's say I say, suppose I say a 25-page paper submitted next week by you is an automatic A in this class. Would that motivate you to write that paper? Probably. Is it a big assignment? It certainly is. But if I said, you submit 25-page paper, automatic A, by the way, I'm not saying, but that's motivation. That's why. That's the motivation. The why is what gets people to do things, not the what or the who, because you can be assigned the what, the who, the how. You have to decide to be motivated. This is you. You are in control. That automatic A might not get you to do the work. You might decide that you'll take your chances with all the assignments and tests rather than put in a lot of work to write a 25-page paper in 1 week. Maybe that's not motivation enough. But that's motivation. And I'll tell you what, motivating people, I don't motivate anybody. I can't motivate you. Motivation is internal. Motivation comes from inside. I might give you a reason to decide to get motivated. I might tell you about that guaranteed A. But you have to decide to take action on it. Motivation is internal. I don't motivate you. I don't motivate anybody. I give you reasons to get motivated. I give examples. But you have to decide to get motivated. I run a motivational podcast called Make Your Someday Today. So if you are interested in podcasts, go out and take a listen to it. It's a motivational podcast. I don't get people to do things. I give them reasons to take steps. I help people find their internal motivation. I don't give them motivation. Now, Hertzberg has some motivating factors. And there's two ways to provide motivation, two ways to provide the why to do something. Right? And if you've read the chapter, you already know, but if you haven't read the chapter, we're going to talk about it. We can have more of a negative motivation and a positive motivation. Negative motivation, positive motivation. Just unplug the computer. That's okay. A negative motivation is I'm going to prevent you from being unhappy. We're going to prevent dissatisfaction. Prevent dissatisfaction, right? How do we prevent dissatisfaction? On the job, what's the easiest way to prevent dissatisfaction? Come on, you know. We've all had jobs where we're not real happy. What's the easiest way that your manager, your boss, the owner, can prevent dissatisfaction? Money. Money. Give you a raise. Promise you a bonus. It doesn't necessarily motivate positively, but it prevents you from being dissatisfied. I can give you status. I can tell you I'm going to give you a passing grade. I can, on the job, promote you and give you a new title. Those are ways of preventing dissatisfaction. A few other ways is working conditions. Maybe change your work hours, flex time, work from home. I can change policies to make you happier or prevent you from being dissatisfied. I can change types of management to keep you from getting dissatisfied. All of these are simple or simple-ish. They prevent you from being dissatisfied to the point that you're going to leave. But they don't really motivate people to do things good. It's more just enough to keep them there, but not enough to get anybody enthused. So how do we promote satisfaction? Promote satisfaction. That's harder. I believe that's more effective, but it's harder to do. How do we promote satisfaction? One way, believe it or not, is to make your work harder. Challenge you. When you accomplish a very simple task, how do you feel? Like anybody could do it, right? But when we make it difficult, when we set that goal high and you achieve it, how do you feel? How's your self-worth, your self-satisfaction, your self-confidence when you've worked at this level and accomplished it? Satisfaction. Interpersonal relationships will increase satisfaction. Maybe setting up a team outing where you all get together and go bowling, softball, volleyball, whatever. Building relationships with one another increases satisfaction. Give you more responsibility. Now, in the prevent dissatisfaction, I'm going to give you a job title. That's about it. To promote satisfaction, I'm going to increase your responsibilities. Maybe I'll put you in charge of people or in charge of an assignment. I'll have you create an assignment. How would you feel in this class if I said, I'd like each one of you to help me by creating 10 questions that I'm going to use on the final exam. Would that make you more satisfied in this class? Or would it prevent dissatisfaction? I think it would help you promote satisfaction because you are actively being involved. Recognition. Recognition is a huge promoter of satisfaction. And how do we promote satisfaction in the classroom? We recognize people with grades. So, to prevent dissatisfaction, money, status, security, throw stuff like that at that. Promote satisfaction and increase internal motivation. Much more difficult, much more effective. Keep people happy. Keep them working together. Keep challenging them so that they grow. A person who's growing in their position is engaged. So, Hertzberg's motivating factors. You can prevent dissatisfaction or you can promote satisfaction in management. Key concepts. I think at this point I'm going to stop this lecture, this part of the lecture. We're going to pick it up talking about task versus relationship behaviors in terms of management and leadership. So I'm going to stop right now. We're going to pick it up with part 2 of this lecture and talk about task and relationship behaviors and delegation and how to delegate.